Farcaster. It is Wednesday, January 3rd, and you are live with Adrian and the Nounish Prof, bringing you 21 minutes of Farcaster news to start your day. And I'm going to post in our little channel. If you don't know, we do have a channel now on Farcaster. So come follow it for all things GM Farcaster. Good morning, Adrian. How are you doing today? What's going on? I have some chai because I am cold. So I needed warm beverages this morning.
Good morning. Tell me about your chai. Is it a mix?
It's a little chai latte.
You
It's a
make it
chai latte
yourself?
from my, I have a little clubhouse where I live, this little apartment building, and they have a little coffee maker. So I just go in there and press buttons, and out comes some chai
Nice.
with milk.
And
Yeah.
and I like your mug, and I have a
Oh,
similar GM
oh,
Farcaster mug.
fantastic!
We're matching
We have
matching
matching
mugs
mugs
today.
today. Yep, I decided I needed. Well, we'll talk about that later at the end. But I decided I needed this mug for reasons you will see in just a bit.
Good morning. Good
So,
morning.
Adrian, it's not like we have anything exciting to talk about today.
Well, we just January 3rd,
January
the
3rd.
third day of the year. We've already done a show this year, so you'd think there's not that much to talk about.
You'd think, but there is. But first, before we get into that, I want to share about our backgrounds. And our backgrounds are the Farcaster aristocracy, back with a V2. I think I missed V1. Added a few more active casters and some Easter eggs about the projects and companies they are building. Now, of course, mintable as a free commemorative NFT for 1 week. So if you want to mint this, go get it. It is really cute. I like it. I love the little like just looking at all the different PFPs and figuring out who's who. It's really fun.
It's
And who's
adorable.
where.
And
It's
read
really fun.
whoever wrote the text that goes along with the artwork. It's hysterical. It reads as if you're in a museum.
Yeah,
And it's a
it's
museum
really good.
plaque, like very, very
Yep.
well done.
It's really good. You'll find it when you click the mint link. The Farcaster aristocracy is captivating reinterpretation of the School of Athens that seamlessly blends the classical with the contemporary, and you can read from there. So it's very much like in that old world, old school art vein, and it's kind of fun. So pick that up while you can for 1 week.
Hey, Prof, let
But
me ask you a question.
yeah.
Do you think there is a Farcaster aristocracy?
I do not, but I find it amusing. I think it is incredibly easy to find an audience on Farcaster, much easier than any other social platform, if that's what you're looking for. But I think audience is probably the wrong word. I would say connections, right? It's just different. So I don't think there's an aristocracy per se. But there are definitely those who are the active casters who everybody knows, who are particular to Farcaster's ecosystem. And you would be one of those. Like, I wouldn't call you a Twitter influencer, right? But I absolutely would call you a Farcaster influencer. Like that's, and I think that's the difference. And what's really interesting is you're starting to see those Ethereum influencers start to move over to Farcaster and make a stronger hold there. And there's been a couple this week that have come in. So actually, let me jump to that real quick. I mean, of course, Vitalik, and we'll talk about his little degenning. But also this week was Adam Cochran. If you're not familiar with him, he's a big threador over on Twitter. And he posted, already asked on Twitter, but let's see if we get better answers here. If you could add or change one feature on Ethereum, what would it be and why? And what was interesting is he then posted on Twitter, on X, the signal to noise ratio on Farcaster is orders of magnitude better than Twitter. If you actually like talking about stuff in depth, I highly recommend checking it out. And I thought that was, really cool to see this week because he's, pretty well known as being one of those, the thinker types, the thought leaders, if you will. So it's really cool to see that happen. So I don't think there's an aristocracy per se, but I love the fun of it all. I'll just say that. I think it's just fun. What do you think? Do you think there's an aristocracy? That's just my opinion. What do you think?
No, of course I don't. But I don't think there is. I think there's a perception there is, and I think there's some people who truly believe there's an aristocracy that is hard to break through. And then I think there's people who will meme about it and have a little fun with it. But no, I don't think there is.
think that's a great point. That's a really good point. I do think there are, yeah, there is that perception. And I think as more time goes on and more of sort of the more traditional, larger accounts kind of move into Farcaster, you'll see less of that discussion. But also to me, that's really an abundance versus scarcity mindset. So this has been
That's
something like
so
I've been
we
talking a lot about lately, and it's like I see it's just this to me is very obvious. Like that's what that
okay,
is.
if I start another podcast, I want to call it the Abundance Podcast
I love
because
it.
this also goes into the QDAO awards that we didn't really get a chance to talk about because as that was another example, just like
Yeah.
this aristocracy of like I support it for the meme, but there's
Yes.
something about both of these kind of meme-ish projects this week that give off a little bit of a scarcity mindset to me.
Yeah, a little bit.
Um, we are right now getting called out in the chat,
I know. We're the aristocracy. I
and
know.
I have
Oh, of
to
course, the
defend
people in
myself.
the aristocracy deny there is an aristocracy. I cannot possibly be the aristocracy. I don't have enough followers for that.
Study this picture and then come back and tell me if you see Prof or I in
We're
this
not in
image.
there.
We are not in the aristocracy. We are plebes and civilians.
That's why we do this show, because we want to connect with you fellow plebes out there. The aristocracy is also watching occasionally as well. But that's really funny. The chat is kind of that is a funny thing, and I can understand that thinking as well, though. But I really don't feel like we are the aristocracy.
No,
But
we're
I
not. And
love
I
that
just
meme of it, and the
I
Q
yeah, I
Dow
mean listen,
thing
I
was
do.
interesting too because like, I thought the nomination part of it was a great idea. Like, let's, share. But it is true when you then have to vote and rank, then it gets a little
Well, because the
tricky. Yeah,
nomination, there's no scarcity. Anyone can nominate,
exactly.
right?
It's
So
abundance. Yeah.
everyone can have a trophy. That's how everyone can
Everyone can
have a
have a trophy.
trophy.
And
But as
like
soon as
that,
it
yeah,
becomes top
yeah,
three,
it
it
gets
gets to this.
it gets
Oh,
tricky. But to me, it was like, when I saw the list of top five, I was like, okay, I can see that. Makes sense. And it didn't bother me at all. It's like I did not expect to be there. It was nice to be nominated, so whatever. But yes, I am in Athens for a week of workation. But I really am just procrastinating on work and walking around and know me. That's really cool. I love that you're so look for the aristocracy there in Athens. See if they're there. We have to move on though, because we have some major news, and we haven't even discussed it yet. And this could be the end of us. I'm just kidding. New feature
this
on
is the first episode
Warpcast.
of GM Farcaster that goes to the last days. The end days of Farcaster are here.
Days. Um, New feature on Warpcast, Quotecast. Recast button now brings up a menu with recast and quotecast options. Quotecast Composer allows you to quotecast into another channel. Quotecast, that's really cool, by the way. Quotecast generate a notification for the original caster, ability to view all quotecasts on an individual cast view. And one follow-up cast from Dan answers for why did it take so long to add quotecasts? And I thought this was interesting. It's all over. We are so back. The chat is cracking me up today. From Dan, we waited 2 years for the culture to develop before layering it in. Felt like it was time too early, and it would have fractured conversations, made the early culture more broadcasty versus conversational and dunk oriented. Feels like we have solid antibodies for that now, and we'll discuss that in a second. But then I realized a little bit of the danger of the quotecast as people started quotecasting old replies from Dan. So Oxen with just got off the phone with Dan, quotecasting Dan's "I would like to invest." And then we had another quotecast. Will there be a FAR token? Yes, from Dan quotecast. These are not. Please click on the quotecast. Please DYOR. But what came from that was also funny from links down there. FC team, here's a new feature we worked hard on for your enjoyment. FC users, lulls time for another dunk on DWR day, DODD for short. And Dan's response, though, was sign of a good feature, to be honest. Okay. One of the first things I ever casted on Farcaster, for real, was Can I we need quote casting. We need quote I think I said quote tweeting, quote retweets
Mhm.
or something like that. Was one of I was gonna go back and try and find it, but it's like one of my very first casts. So I was all for this. I was been waiting for this forever. What are your thoughts, Adrian?
Um, Also, as someone who came over from Twitter and used to quote tweeting, it
Mhm.
was one of the features I noticed early on that was missing. By the way, you are not alone. Many, many people have been
Yeah.
asking.
Oh, yeah, for
Um,
sure.
and So I looked for it. Now, I will always say, let's remind everyone you could quote tweet, you could quote cast. It just took
Mhm.
about, you know,
It took
a
extra steps.
millisecond of extra step. So it was copy link, it was copy your cast, paste it into a cast, say whatever you want. It doesn't notify, but you don't get the notification. So
Right.
quote casting was available. So now this feature one is kind of a one click quote cast along with notification. Um, Everybody was asking for this all year long, and I wanted it too. Dan would always say, "Look, he felt like it makes it too easy to dunk.
Yeah.
It takes it away from the focus of the original caster starting a conversation and people kind of replying to, I'm going to take this, and run with it on." And only after being in Farcaster for a year do I really understand what he meant by it. And it's like you add that
Yeah.
little bit of friction, and I've come around. Like, so I've changed my mind that I'm like, yeah, you know what? Maybe is this really a feature that's good, knowing human nature? And I don't think we've abused it yet in the 12 hours it's been available.
We'll give it time.
I mean, there's some abuse. But
There's
no,
some abuse, but it's, like, funny. To me,
I've
it's, like,
actually come
hilarious,
completely
actually.
around. I am hard of like, don't need it, and I don't know
It's so
if
funny.
we should have it.
And I
You
was
can hate me
like,
for that take. I'm
immediately, I
not
was like,
popular.
boom, quote-cast. Like, boom, I'm so excited. But I get it. I get it. And you know what? After seeing a couple of those like funny quote casts of like prior responses from Dan, like, okay, I get it. I get it. It makes it a lot easier. I do like that the quote casting into a different channel and things like that. I think there's some um, good use case there, to make it a lot easier to sort of bring a conversation that might be relevant somewhere else or, related to something else. So I'm all for this. However, like, I had come around a little bit too. I was like, all right, okay. I don't think we're going to see a major issue, but it'll be interesting to watch and see. But it's true because I have quote casted, like I probably did it a handful of times where I copy and paste and it was a pain in the butt, but it was mostly like I might be, copying something you had said or, things like that. And it was a pain. So this is so much easier and I love it. So I'm very excited.
Well, yeah,
We'll
you
see.
and listen, and I love that they listen to feedback.
They
So,
definitely do.
it's
Yeah.
like, so you got to, it's a way to build trust. So I know it doesn't really matter what I think anyway. It's here to stay,
It's here to
and
stay.
we might as well embrace it. I do think
It does
though,
matter what you think, but it doesn't mean it's going
it
to
does.
change anything. Those are
It
different
matters, but
things.
it doesn't.
It matters, but it
Um,
doesn't.
but I
Our
do think for
influence is a
those,
is a little less than people might we're not the aristocracy.
yeah, we are
Our
not the
influence is a
aristocracy.
little
We have no
little
it.
less than you realize.
But I do
This
think for those of us that are kind of have been early and really have create the norms and the vibes, um, and what Dan calls culture antibodies.
culture. Yeah.
Maybe it's that we have a little more responsibility
To not
to,
abuse the feature.
yeah, and keep the culture alive.
Keep the
So
vibes. Keep the vibes going. I do agree with that. I do feel like it is, important. Like going back to Adam Cochran's cast and tweet earlier about signal versus noise. I think that's really important, and that is a bigger, So keeping that in mind when we're talking about how this develops. By the way, we have a name for this. It's called. Is it Quasts? Is that what we're going with? It's QASTS? I don't know. I think that's gonna need work. That's hard to say. It looks good. Looks good when typing it, but I don't know.
our chatters are funny today.
They are very funny. They're very funny. You're missing out if you're not here live. We understand some of you are sleeping, but
Oh, it's
it
pronounced
is
cast. So
it's pronounced
Q asked.
cast.
Q
Q
asked
asked.
is pronounced cast. Not to be
I like how
confused with
I like how
not to
when
be
people
confused
who
with
make up a
cast.
word tell you exactly how to pronounce it. Q
Not to be
asked.
confused
Okay.
with cast.
Okay. Sure there won't be any confusion whatsoever. Okay, so developing story. The Quotecast saga. We will keep an eye on it and report back on Friday as to how things are developing. We've got a few other things happening. We've had some interesting things happening in the DGen channel. Let's just say that. One of the things has been Warps for Engagement experiment of giving warps to folks who recast or or do different things, interact with people's casts. So that has been an interesting experiment. And Joe Blau had posted here the results of my warps for engagement experiment in an infographic. It started at 25, ended at 5. So a little different way to approach this. And one of the things that Oxen had pointed out was the best QDAO is happening on DGen. Actually, speed running what Farcaster incentives look like at scale, making Warp's liquid, emergent, novel token distribution system. So my response to that was, and I replied to him, I agree with the DAO part of it, the DAU. I think it's helping the DAU. I'm not convinced it's helping the Q, the quality part. I'm not convinced. However, to his point, to a couple days ago in the DGen channel, walks in Vitalik Buterin. My very conservative bet on boring but likely outcomes polymarket politics portfolio seems to be doing well. Particularly proud of the TW election arbitrage I discovered. 155 becomes 160 no matter who wins. I just thought this was fascinating to see Vitalik jump in there, and now he is on the $DGen board, leaderboard. So my argument gets completely cut by the fact that Vitalik did that. So thanks, Vitalik.
Didn't have that on my 2024 bingo card.
No, Vitalik jumping into the DGen channel and actually legitimizing it was not on my bingo card at all. So what are you thinking, and what are you seeing in your feed? Are you following the DGen channel, by the way? Let me ask that first.
I think I follow every channel I see. I'm an
Yeah.
equal opportunity follower. If I see a channel I haven't heard of, I just follow it. Newsflash, I'm not a DGen. When I see, the
It should be no surprise to the regular listener.
If you know me, the whole concept of I'll give you the transactional nature of, when I see I'll give you warps for a recast, warps for follow. You're I'm going to give you $1 to cast for me. It doesn't feel like it's built on anything real. It feels casino-ish to me, not a fan. However, one of my New Year's intentions that I set is, and it's actually been for the last few years, I just roll it over, is this idea of being less judgment, passing less judgment, increasing curiosity. So someone else who is in the DGen channel, I think also recently casted, and I can't remember who it was, but just said, it's like, oh, you've got Ted doing the muting and saying, but once you're in there, there's things you learn that you wouldn't have otherwise learned. So from the outside, it looks like a casino. It looks silly. It looks spammy. It's on my feed. I'm not into it. Are there social dynamics happening in the DGen channel where people are experimenting? We talked last week about bills and farts so I'm going to not pass judgment, and maybe someday, because I feel like at someday, what are the chances that we escape into degenerate and end up there and learn something we don't know? But It's not
So
doing it for me right now.
I'm a part-time degen. I always say it that way. So I dabble, but I am not like this. I'm not going to chase every coin. I'm not going to chase everything. But I've got some degen coming. I've got some spam. I got all the things. I really am very bad at trading. Like I completely messed something up like 2 days ago that was ridiculous. Like I should have been a 4x and I totally blew it. So I'm bad at that part of this, but I like to try all the things so that I understand what's happening and what they're doing. And I really found like it's really funny because Dwarfy's in our chat saying Vitalik is a degen. And like, yeah, there's a little bit of that in I think everybody who's in crypto, because otherwise you wouldn't be here this early. Like there's gotta be a little bit of that gambler in you, or that maybe gamble is not the right word, but risk taker, or else you wouldn't be here. So there's a little
Yeah.
bit of that in everybody. And
And I
I
certainly,
always go ahead.
I certainly identify as, someone who will
Risk
say, yeah,
taker.
just
Yeah.
try something.
Experimentor. Yeah,
Mhm.
for sure. Like, look, you're here.
Experimentor.
Experimentor. Like you're here, of course. Being a degen is a sure sign of being a multiple crypto cycles for sure.
Mhm.
Like you stick around. I think Johnny posted that a while ago. You stick around long enough, and you end up a degen. You start as a founder and a degen. I think that's when Matt with points. That's when that happened. One more note on that. There's an experiment going on. Jacopo introducing $ XP experience points for on-chain characters. What if you could carry your characters in multiple games, retaining their level, stats, perks? What if actions in a game could affect another one? XP is a gateway to a new generation of on-chain games. So that's the kind of thing that you might see in the DGen channel that's a little bit interesting and like, okay, well, what is this and what's this experiment? And I do appreciate that I'm seeing a lot of different experiments with the tokenomics and things like that. So I'm paying attention to that stuff because that can be really useful and educational. So and just ignoring the spam and not participating too much in the spammy parts. I don't really care for that part.
That's
Um,
probably a good skill of the future is actually the ability to, it's cut spam with things that when everything looks like spam, being able to find
yes,
and
critical
someone
thinking.
posted a blog post. Yeah. Someone posted a blog post this week about kind of, sophisticated degen, or
Oh,
degen
that's funny.
sophistication.
That's
And
interesting.
so I think for the people who are thoughtful and
Hmm.
are getting into the degen channel are able to somehow, or it's one big cope, or
I
somehow
don't know.
able to
It could be
find
one big cope.
themselves.
Yeah. Be one big cope.
That's it.
We are at the end of our time, but we have one thing we want to talk about really quickly. With more coming later, and that is we are launching a little collection of cups, if you will, for an opportunity to support GM Farcaster and all we're doing. And we have a few different ones that are going to launch at 9 o'clock today. So we've got a cup of mole, cup of wow wow, and a cup of CLP. More information will be coming, but just to give you an idea, like the mole will give you an airdrop of episode 38 with Dan Romero, your ENS wallet added to the credits of our show, and an invitation to a VIP virtual happy hour. And there's a lot more levels that we have and opportunities for brands and sponsorship. So we're just going to attempt and experiment with how we can keep this going sustainably through hopefully through an NFT strategy mostly. So that's again part of our little experiment. So more to come. We'll have a little paragraph post coming out in a little bit with all the details and more on Friday. So that is it. Thank you to the chat. You are all so amusing today. It has been just lovely. Um, thank you, Adrian. Anything else before that I forgot before we sign off?
Um, no, I think we're ready to wrap.
Okay. Well, have an awesome Wednesday, everybody, and we will see you on Friday for more GM